The rain pounded hard against the faded cherry-red hood of Andrea's worn-out sedan, the rhythmic splatter and unlikely accompaniment to the pulsating guilt gripping her heart. It was supposed to have been an uneventful drive back from her brother's wedding, but the sequence of skeletal branches reflected in the rearview mirror still lurked in her rummy like accusing shadows. Andrea Ruffo, clad in a practical navy dress most bridesmaids might scoff at, was no stranger to navigating life's unexpected potholes. With a perennial need to prove her worth beyond societal expectation, she possessed a sharp intellect often disguised by self-deprecating humor. Yet beneath her understated demeanor lurked a fierce determination shadowed by a yearning for acceptance she would seldom admit. The jolt came out of nowhere, a figure dashing across the dimly lit alley, the screeching wheels, the thud, the shattering quiet that followed. Her breath came in ragged bursts as she gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white as the slice of moonlight cutting across the cracked dashboard. Just a cat, just a stray cat, she tried convincing herself, heartbeat nearly drowning out the cleaving silence. But the pair of polished leather shoes abandoned in the alley corner told another story. The rain seemed less forgiving by the time Andrea reached her tiny apartment on the outskirts of Roma, the city of ancient ruins and secrets buried under age-old stones. Her escape had been messy, a barely controlled forward sway at the wheel as panic gnawed from the inside, like moths feasting on a yellowed tapestry of nerves. Andrea's hands shook as she held the kettle for her evening ritual of chamomile tea, the earthy aroma offering false comfort as she grappled with the evening's haunting clamor. Signora Ruffo, the voice that clicked the call button of her mental intercom, was deep, calm, measured a striking contrast to the eerie quiet enclosing her quaint living room. She didn't recognize him, yet the undercurrent of authority in his words promised nothing short of consequence. Andrea's thoughts darted to the discarded shoes, and a sinking sensation told her this was no ordinary follow-up to a miscalculated swerve. Minutes passed like molasses in winter until a knock, moderated in timbre but resonant, demanded her compliance. With apartment lights dimmed to a comforting glow, Andrea hesitated, then drew open the door. Dressed in a charcoal suit that seemed sculpted to his form, the man standing before her was an embodiment of both Italian sophistication and a threat veiled in elegance. His calculating gaze remained steady, containing secrets behind a thin veil of raindrops clinging stubbornly to dark hair. "You have something of mine," he stated, the velvet of his voice brushing over her like an unwelcome caress. I don't know what you mean," Andrea stammered, the words tumbling in the same clipped cadence as the rain hitting rooftops outside. He regarded her in silence, eyes dark pools underlined with an unsettling mixture of curiosity and amusement. She felt exposed under his scrutiny, a moth fixated on the flame of his attention. Here was Andrea, just another pedestrian in the saga of city life, now thrashed into a narrative not her own by nothing but an ill-fated reflex. He brushed a speck of invisible dust from his lapel with studied nonchalance before speaking again. "My name is Alessandro Ferrante, and this is not a request." Inwardly, Andrea fought to brace herself against the swirl of defiance and submission that his presence evoked. She forced herself unbidden courage under the weight of his statement. This was the Ferrante family's heir whispered stages above the judiciary corridors, a name echoing prosperity and darkness both. "You'll hear the truth first, Miss Ruffo," Alessandro continued, his calm punctuating her racing thoughts. "That you struck my associate. You left, but there's more to the story." Andrea's heart twisted, both at the revelation and the grounded certainty in his address. The fixation with avoiding eye contact now a lost cause, she met his gaze, searching, yearning, yet this man possessed an unreadable depth. "Yes, I did," she confessed, voice steady yet delicate as the fascination in his presence tugged at her reason. He nodded once, a shadow of satisfaction crossing his features. "Good. Honesty holds meaning even when misguided." Andrea's mind screamed to correct his trail of conclusion, but her throat clenched stubbornly. "I'll be blunt, Andrea," he flourished with a sense of practiced diplomacy. "I demand recompense." "A debt?" she challenged, bitterness brushing the edge of her caution. "Indeed," he replied, "your heart is a suitable currency." The implications fell like stones, heavy with gravity and mystique. Yet Andrea inhaled deeply, anchoring herself, resolved beneath the swirl of uncertainty consuming her night. Then it's war, Mr. Ferrante. She wriggled free a smile, a sliver of wool to his iron. His lips curled with respectful acknowledgement, a refined dance between predator and prey as the rain hushed in reverence to their private standoff. The minutes stretched into charged silence, her heartbeat threading courage through capillary veins. A shadow darted past the window, a blur barely grasped, prompting an involuntary step back. But the shadow remained watching. Are you ready to trust a wolf in the darkness? Alessandro's voice enveloped the dimly lit room, his words poised between both cautionary and inviting. The very walls seemed to pulse in response, the thick, musky scent of aged leather permeating her nostrils, mingling with the sharper tang of cold steel from somewhere beyond sight. Andrea stood spine straight as a lamppost, the warmth of her apartment now merely a facade as Alessandro Ferrante, self-anointed arbiter of her fate, filled the space between them with an unspoken contract. In her periphery, the soft glow from the streetlight outlined the wear in the curtain's tassels, grounding her as she grappled with the enormous weight of her present reality. Her knuckles lost no resoluteness since their grip on the car wheel, yet now lacked a vehicle to propel forward. Hope, with reins trembling in fear, clung to the frayed edges of her resolve. Alessandro smeared disquiet over the air, his presence a calculated juxtaposition against the comforts of her surroundings. She knew here sat power wrapped in patience, a patience that could unleash storms or, perhaps, offer an unexpected umbrella. Understanding he wanted more than mere dialogue, Andrea searched within the flood of adrenalized thought, weaving her way past recollection and regret. Her eyes, recognizing they had never left his, bore into the depth of his promises, seeking any latent truths. Why my heart? Her carefully chosen words rose as a veil through the charged silence, testing the gravity of his earlier claim. Because only a willing heart can defy its own chains, Alessandro explained, the curve of his smile embracing her initial disbelief. Assets belong to the family, but strength derived from heart. His pause was as sharp and arresting as a maestro pausing before an aria. The balancing act of emotions tipped precariously, every carefully plotted word dancing dangerously close to shaping an unwelcome fate. Andrea refrained from visible vulnerability, but her mind skated close to thin ice as euphemisms became her footing. The pressure was a vice, an eternal second where choices expanded across unlikely futures. Andrea spied herself in the framed reflection amid shadows. A woman yet to decide her course in an unfolding tale, but ready to vault expectation with heart-stake defiance. At her refusal to immediately acquiesce, Alessandro's gaze sharpened, the keen edge of challenge accompanying his curiosity. Here was a woman cornered into choices she didn't fathom she'd make, yet she refused to wilt beneath the mirage of inevitability. The room took a contemplative breath as Andrea gathered her mettle. I suppose the family never quite made you the poet, she intoned with startling softness. Alessandro chuckled lowly, a sound that rippled with hidden understanding. And perhaps the stakes are best kept as riddles to those who paint words, he replied. A silence followed, vying for companionable, if not for the storm weaving in present memory, waiting to see who might seize it first. I won't owe a debt I don't understand, Andrea countered, the void of options now presenting only this one tangible truth. Then don't, he agreed, leveling with her as quiet intent met the edges of darkness. Take but one chance to prove your worth. Her questions, eager as moths to a candle, flickered on her tongue but remained unspoken. She played no longer just a role. She learned slowly that as she defined her place in his parable, illuminating more than merely corners held in shadow for too long. When Alessandro moved, he did so with unburdened grace, extracting a thick envelope from his pocket and extending it without comment. She hesitated, hands not trusted with pure instinct, but mindful of unseen judgment. Open it, he instructed, stepping back like a director offering stage. Andrea accepted reluctantly, feeling the thrill of a pulse that was not her own tempo as she pushed open the flap. Within, no gold nor bindings remained, only a photograph of a dilapidated chapel. Colors fading, invaded by vine and time. Mille Grace Chapel, explained Alessandro evenly, as though the name possessed a purpose born of ancient blood. Inside lies a relic, steeped in the very tradition we uphold. It is time it found meaning again. Nod was half a promise, curiosity steering the remainder. And if I resist your relic hunt, adversity sharpens or shatters, he reflected, a reciprocal honesty that echoed in spaces familiar yet apart. But in it may lie absolution from chains unseen by outward eyes. Departure ultimately came quickly as the air held its peace in no favor, leaving Andrea with untethered thoughts as Alessandro left without further endowment of words. The chapelle, a tale of stone entwined with iron, stood a reality she could not refuse to see. She waited, lit by the quiet aftermath of things unsaid and scents yet distinct. A memory surfaced, her mother's hand brushing cool stones at their garden back home, whispering mystic riddles. Andrea's resolution crystallized through firm intention, filled with gaps, pledged not just to known tenets of survival, but those birthed from shadow. The door clicked, unlatched from its cerebration, as her steps resonated within, the molt of determination not lost in finding direction amid evening's embrace. In the dimness, a figure became shadow, enigmatical and solid as a newborn path. Remember, the night echoed softly, palpable before silence reclaimed its realm. It's yours to choose the next move. A lone candle flickered in the thick, echoing abyss of Mila Grace Chapel, casting distorted shadows that danced upon the intricate latticework of the aging pews. The air was tantalizingly thick with a scent Andrea couldn't quite place, a mysterious blend of musky old vellum and damp stone. Her footsteps were a whisper, a ghostly reverberation against the damp chapel floor as she ventured deeper into its sanctum, anxiety threading her pulse in a curious waltz with anticipation. She felt a sense of reverence, as though entering this chapel was less of an assignment and more of a rite. Andrea Ruffa wasn't easily flustered, but stepping into this forgotten corner of the world felt like stepping into an unexplored depth of her own spirit. Seen only by intricate stained glass reflections, all crimson and azure, her modest silhouette moved among the pews like penance's shadow. Here she was stripped bare of the frenzy of Rome, left with only her own introspections. A creak, perhaps the sole voice of history rattling in defiance as Andrea knelt beside the wooden altar bruised with time. Her fingers traced its cracking surface, imagining every scar as a whisper of faith weathered beneath cascades of days. Yet here she was, inexplicably drawn to the altar's existence as though it tugged invisibly at her marrow. Alessandro's words echoed still, a lingering reminder of why she had come, of an opportunity veiled beneath enigma. Yet the room offered her nothing except the ghostly sigh of the past till Andrea found it, a small compartment, cunningly concealed beneath the skeletal remains of the altar's covering. The hidden panel slid back, revealing a delicate, velvet-bound manuscript. Its leather cover was soft, embossed with the worn insignia of a forgotten family crest. She lightly grazed its surface, skin tingling with static anticipation, a relic's pulse beneath the pads of her fingers. And when she opened it, the chapel's stillness held its breath. The pages whispered mystery, delicate inked lines etched in a cipher she couldn't untangle. Beneath the cover, stamped within a page aged by centuries, a single line of spiraling script revealed itself. Una cosa bella e una gioia per sempre. Andrea frowned at the phrase, half understood, and yet its lyrical cadence lingered like an almost memory. Her curiosity clawed with its impetuous grip, fueled by the very words Alessandro had deemed significant. As the relic's secrets unfolded quietly in the dim light, so did Andrea unravel beneath the weight of questions unasked and their limitless answers. She harbored doubts about Alessandro's motives, but also a yearning to understand, to unveil why this mattered for her supposed debts. Could she trust a flicker of affection for the daughter of fate's debts? Claustrophobic realization dawned. Perhaps her heart's currency was worthy of more than retribution. Still immersed in thought, Andrea startled at the creak of the chapel door, cutting through silence with authority. Her gaze snapped toward motion. There stood Alessandro Ferrante, subtly outlined in the chapel's arched entrance, a figure of stark authority meshed in filtered light. Andrea straightened instinctually, clutching the velvet book to her chest as if fearing it might now turn to a trial's ledger. Curiosity, I see, lends its strength to understanding, Alessandro observed, stepping with deliberate command into the hallowed space. Her exhale was involuntary, a hiss through tense determination. Half-truths and riddles, she noted. You demand a reckoning for it? Heavens wept through the chapel's broken beams, fragmenting his expression into a mosaic of intentions. Each echo holds its own gravity, Ms. Ruffo, Alessandro countered, advancing to meet her surrounded by mingling sunlight's embrace. Beneath the swelling mists of opaque revelation, Andrea stood unyielding, patient as an edifice yet breathless for answers. Her voice was grave, yet soft as fall's first frost. And yet how should I know my own? Alessandro's gaze was penetrating, acknowledging her strength forged in the flame of uncertainty. A choice forged of your own conviction rewards not bated breath, but spirit renewed. She released the tension with a reluctant nod, only now catching the edge of warmth lining his voice, a comfortingly flawed vulnerability. His extended hand, palm unfurling like a path's invitation, was met with hers. It trembled in answer, not in fear, but in anointed expectation veiling the earthen strains beneath her certainty. As fingers intertwined, Andrea found solace in his implicit acceptance within the chaos. In every corner one seeks resolution, he murmured, their path leading through silent aisles lined with histories rewritten. With that grasp, conviction bound them like vines triumphant over crumbling stone. Andrea's response was hesitant yet filled with steel promise. If shadows mark my trust, she challenged, then it's by light must you expose it. Alessandro agreed silently through his grip as understanding flowed liquid and unspoken between them. Together they ventured beyond the aged doors, the chapel's ghostly secrets left to slumber once more. Yet as they tasted the stark air of day, a whispering chill breezed by with a telling force. Somewhere in the drape of shadows, a figure remained cloaked in obscurity, or perhaps fate's armor woven from delayed consequence. It lingered like the night's silent echo, adjudicating, observing. Every choice holds an echo. The high-pitched whine of tires meeting asphalt echoed in the cavernous silence, like tension sliced with a blade. Andrea could feel the thrum echo through her bones as the sleek black vehicle, all polished metal and hidden strength, sped along the coastal road. She was aware of every heartbeat, each a drumbeat of anticipation and unease. The storm had finally broken, sheets of rain cascading wound like a film noir scene sketched hastily in shades of gray. Each raindrop a cold pinprick against the skin, yet oddly invigorating, as if the elements themselves conspired to renew her spirit while testing its mettle. Fog wrapped the landscape, muting colors into a sepia mystery, and with each curve of the winding road, Andrea was reminded of the precarious path she now tread. The vehicle hummed with a latent energy, much like its silent occupants. That she sat beside Alessandro Ferrante now was a clandestine truth impossible only days before, where rain was an excuse for reflection, not rebirth. Yet the heart learns its yearning, and here beat the rhythm of defiance, not disdain a revolution cradled in iron. Alessandro's eyes were fixed on the road, though intuitively Andrea felt his awareness, an intent unbroken by silence. His visage emerged through a blur of whispers carried by wind and storm, features sharp with the elegance of a statue who'd absorbed the world's boundless stories. I didn't ask for absolution, Andrea remarked softly, bridging the talk of necessary silence. You asked for truth, came his affirmation, low and certain like a bell tolling within a cathedral. I suppose, and of late I'm not even sure of my questions. Even when charred, the forge knows what fires temper true, Alessandro countered. Andrea's smile tilted, a private communion shared between rain and ritual. She could see how themes of revelation wove about them like a mosaic. Certain threads, bold in contrast, demanded pondering while subtle strands connected perception until brilliance. Lulled into a delicate cadence, the journey tapered towards a rendezvous with fate cloaked in obscurity by rain's spattered windows. In this motion, rooted stories now twinkled. He spoke once more amidst the murmuring rise of dawn breaking the horizon. To reclaim an emboldened heart is often the courage to hold up its mirror. As if in defiance of its wayward reflection, she asked, stirred by the spectral uncertainty of his words. No, an acknowledgement ambiguity, born of choices past. The vehicle halted with a suspension of breath. Space widened imperceptibly, filled with the quiet yearning of unnoticed things. A distant lighthouse stood sentinel, wrapping coastlines in beams, a guardian to echo memory, hands, and boundaries. Andrea felt the pull of its solace, and within this sanctuary a continuity pressing toward the appearance of ceaselessness, a memory perhaps unknowingly written by the buoy of anticipation. Alessandro gestured for her to descend, their destination cloaked in the same shroud that was impossibly tangible upon touch, a breath both old and new. He cut a figure exemplary of condensed gravity and movement, illumined for a moment in headlamps' light. Footfalls echoed on washed stones beneath a sea, reciting its endless lullaby. It awaited them a villa, grand yet decayed, a tapestry of fortune drawn in green vine and forgotten grace. Time had sketched its own verses on its plaster, the sea air a constant and ardent collaborator. Compelled by an untraveled path, she followed, setting forth through the drifting corridors of memory and expectation. Despite its guise, conviction is not dismissible by illusion, Alessandro stated, standing in repose by a hewn pillar, tracing lines of histories unraveled. And still the heart chooses whom it appoints its post, she murmured, exploring the calculated paradox. Emerging voices vibrated with an unsettling harmony, a council perhaps attracted by magnetic balance, seated in rooms filled with familiar aromas, rich, earthy, warm. Various figures, all marked by experiences inscribed on lifelong scrolls, the world's ink evident upon them. Introduced by agile observations roaming from Andrea to the awaiting guests as Alessandro's unbreakable gaze pursued attention from all present shadow thieves. In every haven, there's a returning canary constrained by an intention, Alessandro announced, contextual rapture crafted in gravitas. To see a truth stripped of pleasantry is its own revolution, commented one aged emissary, voice worn yet seamless, brimming with curiosity. Andrea's eyes became overtures, a metronome, held gently between challenge and will, synchronizing the stark unknowable. I am little more than a rococo silhouette cast of choice, Andrea interjected, words navigating rapidly on sincerity's tide. Even the sea declares I am. Another voice echoed, solemn as the surf, palm shadow lining statement with import. We are but echoes, Alessandro expressed with wide acknowledgement. Gesturing the silent world spoke effortlessly through muted actions, though within resides the room for the unfinished symphony of purpose found. But not all tides lead home, Andrea murmured, uncertain how this truth reserved for ocean's telling would determine her own form of retribution. Murmurs coiled around lineage, each room responding in accord with rests between cadences. And yet, on forgotten sand, some alchemized pathways, fledgling not by choice but stamped to evolve destiny's long-forged tapestry. Alessandro's intervention appeared as a parting command, articulating the motive not yet unfolded. Andrea murmured in acknowledgement, displaced among strangers, yet refurbishing presence in opposition. An object caught her eye, a flash of silver at the heart of the shifting tide, fleeting and transient, captured by shadow just out of reach. Her heart whispered through the orchestration, woven to the continuity of newly raised overtures. Leave the past within these walls. Andrea questioned softly while the sea's breath whistled through the gaps, forming visions of enveloping motive. As the symphony weaved slow, steady wisdom, she could sense the etches of farewell, secret benevolence, standing sentinel at the heart of this hidden enclave. From the villa emerged only one true uncertainty. He trusts too quietly, she realized, as the whisper of the silver glimmer embedded itself ever deeper into their synchronized tale. Where Andrea's eyes dared their charge, dragged across intuition's border and into view, every element of subtlety, and halted lucidity. Shadows crept with purpose, written into the film, horizon of their tale yet gently traced by fate as the sun ambled below watery mirrors. A glass shattered in the bloody slip of Andrea's footfall, sending an eerie, cascading sound through the dim corridor. The house sighed around her as mist seeped through fractured windows, carrying the scent of forgotten tales. She could almost taste the sting of dust and antiquity clinging to the air, much like the apprehension winding its sinuous path into her heart. Andrea skittered away, shards glinting maliciously at her feet. Her hands, pale and trembling, bore the aftermath of her search-a letter, sealed with a crimson wax bearing the Ferrante family's mark. It pulsed with possibility, containing secrets as lethal as the shards embedded in the floor's varnish. Her practical side, often veiled by quieter aspirations, whispered caution. Yet curiosity threaded its way through her resolve, a siren's call she found impossible to resist amidst these hollowed halls of bygone grandeur. Or, with their wall-pressed shadows and stories caught in time's amber. She flicked the seal open, fingertips brushing the edge of revelation, and extracted a heavy parchment. Fine cursive greeted her, words inhaled by fading candlelight. A litany of Ferrante ventures needing an intervention only she could provide, a puzzle interwoven with her fate and inadvertently her heart. As she analyzed each deliberate stroke, realization coiled around her. The Ferrante Empire, its glory and infamy, resting on a spine of calculated maneuvers, now sought stabilization. They needed her. Her pulse quickened, a wild tempo quickening in response to this unexpected empowerment amidst her entrapment. But shadows cast from broader schemes gathered looming structures, reflecting politics of power, defined in nimble steps Andrea had never played, but now was compelled to master. Alessandro's voice, its granite timbre gripping her, echoed from memory, each inflection now worn like armor in her thoughts. They sense your competence, his words had been measured, assessing, yet they disregard the depth from which it draws. Andrea moved, each shuffled step a revelation, her past perceptions yielding a reconsideration of her underestimated position. She faced no mere collection of rogues within a villa of merchant kings, but an enigma, a machine refined by tradition, yet corroded with ambition. And yet, she felt at its core she could redefine its rhythm of premonition that ignited potential into flame. In dawning resolution, Andrea could see only clarity amid Dominion's sway. Clarity so palpable that silhouettes faltered like incorrect props awaiting their cue to exit. Outside, the rain had reduced to a soft patter, droplets now symphonic percussion against forgotten charms. The symphony suited her, adding courage to pursuit, pulsing beneath her considerations like veins pressed against time. Andrea knew she stood at the precipice, comprehension woven tightly amongst today's intricate web-owned decision, transforming glancing trust into boundless opportunity, yet balanced upon edge. But opposition waited, not dormant, but poised and ready. A challenge veiled by formality, rising with each furthered glance exchanging subtext with Ferrante's hierarchies of influence. One could feel the pulse beneath the spoken, echo writhing in fluidity of certainty and chaos alike, a dance perfected by wanton dealings, concealed within socially sanctioned confinement. The council awaited by the villa doors, a hooded human cloud, the slick of their gambit visible in the shimmering distortions of a night receding. The air held tension, gentle submission tangled amidst ambition. She approached, holding in her mind the mantra Alessandro had whispered. Hidden guise or otherwise, show them not what they expect, but what they fear. Their eyes on her were torchlights seeking fuel, her revelation poised to engulf. Andrea stood alone yet in companionable embrace with destiny, a forge newly kindled by her unconventional stride. Andrea brought the thin sheet, instrument of choice revealing truth hidden beneath fragile exposition of tradition. It rippled in air, beckoning an inviting audience. Is this what you fear most? She wielded words sharp as glass, sparking question in their unity, arousing memory, a silent war cry, piercing fertile land. The council murmured low, shadowed figures gripped by unity, though rancor bitten with pride. She heard their voice born of ash. The new coursing threatened stability. Know this, verifying, ruffle change is wolf-born. Bewildered silence rolled into chaotic discourse, every opinion a note in an orchestra without its adherents. Andrea stepped within her frame central, opinions nestled within night's embrace. New as fire, so let alignment blaze anew. a gambit thunder-like and tremulous as unbridled prowess stretched toward her ambition. Waning resolve flickered. Dawn's amber visibility revealed identities entrenched, consuming shadows creeping between them, edging toward relinquishment. From the tension, Alessandro emerged, poise fluidic yet commanding, silhouette drawn against roiling conversation. He spoke, clear voice splitting expectation with assurance, lingering in peace-brokered arms. Even stagnant waters offer reflection. Embrace what you have not recognized, a beacon, now standing amongst us, a torch held high. Subtlety yielded, weavings undone and grasped anew. Andrea found the equilibrium, breathed serenity amidst gathering tumult of expectations challenged and renewed. Her presence, unforeseen yet embraced by the resonation of unwavering heart, united the council's dichotomy, a phoenix pushing wings through adversity's ash. Andrea stood taller, strength born of renewed acknowledgement. She returned Alessandro's gaze, intensity mirroring truth within truth, an exchange upon which foundations were fortified. The villa, with its secrets wombed in vein-laden fecundity, exhaled once more an ancient salutation. Andrea saw in ghosts of lamplight mirrored familiar acceptance, her heart singing still a role rewritten by time's intonement. From shadows came the whispered acknowledgement. The heart chooses. Teach them strength. The weary beams lapsed with warmth, draped in evening's fading shadows. Yet Andrea heard again, behind her, but no presence sought to claim it, a creak of floorboards blending into refrain. The voice, gentle yet present, delineated promises held in all paths. It echoed with lived assurance, unaddressed. The chamber's darkness whispered its haunting melody once more, in resonance, within light's gripping passage. Lost or found, here truth reveals. Trust its echo, the words lingered crystalline, weaving resolve to form setting the stage, as whispers bowed to silence within shadow's depth. A shadow darted across the glossy marble of the villa courtyard, and Andrea instinctively ducked behind the ornate fountain, water dribbling sluggishly over its stone edges like an old man's sigh. Dust motes floated lazily in the dwindling rays of the afternoon sun, caught in a dance that taunted her nerves already stretched taut as violin strings. Her breath mingled with the scent of jasmine crawling over crumbling walls of fragrance, too sweet for the bitterness gnawing at her. Andrea Rufo crouched, a peacock amongst pigeons, armed only with the letter that had set today's stage, her heart pounding a rhythm both fearful and determined. Already underestimated once, she had resolved never to slip into shadows unnoticed ever again. Such was the folly of those who saw only the quiet pianist in dim-lit rooms, the unassuming woman whose potential was gauged by soft-spoken words and polite smiles, while the real symphony of her spirit crescendoed unappreciated. The click of heels across the courtyard broke the reverie. Andrea froze, mastering an outward calm, though inwardly her thoughts sang with urgency. Was it ally or adversary? In the world she occupied now, alliances shifted with the sand, constancy a rare jewel. Tu sei l'eco della mia resistenza. Effectively, you are the echo of my resistance, a phrase meant to embolden by whispers heard in complicity rather than challenge. Alessandro's choice, spoken into evening shadows, had left her reflecting on the dual edges of defiance and submission. Lost in the play of light and shadow, Andrea almost didn't notice the figure lurking at the courtyard's far edge, a slim silhouette, unmistakably poised for action. Her instincts screamed alert. Such shadows as these lace evenings with their expectation, the figure murmured, voice like silk brushing along glass, sending chills dancing along Andrea's spine. She bit down on a retort, instincts urging caution over confrontation. Standing slowly from her shelter behind the fountain, Andrea bared her presence like a confession. He was shorter than Alessandro, his form wiry but darting with a potential energy, all coiled steel and adrenaline. His gaze swept over her in a tactical assessment. Expecting shadows lets twilight mold expectation, he continued smoothly. And how does one expel shadows, she shot back, lifting her chin with the challenge innate in that guarded query. A lamp in hand, illuminating truth, he replied, flicking a match with casual precision, the flame a frail but fierce dancer on its stick. She watched it with a curiosity that did little to mask determination lurking in her gaze. Flicker by human flicker, her world redefined around these unanticipated encounters. Just as quickly, the match snuffed out, leaving only the haunting memory of its warmth, a metaphor itself not lost within the sequence spun today. "You are invited to an audience," he said abruptly, leaving the indecipherable poetry and stepping into the less obscure realm of direct speech. Andrea fought to find her voice, her words catching only to break through moments later. "With whom?" He smiled, a gesture disarming in its simplicity. "Guardians of the villa, those you waltz to meet beneath cloisters and time's woven branches." What if I decline? Her skepticism found edges hard enough to cut. "Then you are left holding only water," he replied enigmatically, fingers gesturing towards the well in the fountain center. "Though water is but life's prelude." In the stillness that ensued, Andrea felt the villa's age-old secrets wrap her in a gossamer cloak, each layered promise indistinguishably bridged from past to present. Accepting the invitation Adair framed as destiny, she accompanied him, minds drawing lace over direction's ambiguity. Their path took to marble hallways warmed unevenly by dying sunlight. The room Andrea entered was unexpectedly modest, furnished only with wooden chairs, simple but bearing artisan care. Intricately carved backs suggested eras leaning towards an opulence now subdued. "I smell the whisper of age-old secrets," she confessed the moment air transformed sensation, inhaling years marked by scents far richer than recognized histories. Andrea's guides, now joined in twos and threes, awaited the inevitable exchange, each semblance unique, each story evident in the lines creasing aged yet vibrant faces. "You've entrusted your ambitions unto fate," she announced to the gathered confidants, her tone woven from adventure and willful assertion. "You misjudge us as men who rely on whims." The reply came swift, unrepentant, though not without curiosity. "I see risks taken as currency, not folly," Andrea countered, her words weaving tales themselves of practiced balance between faculty and daring. A figure more shadow than substantiality moved towards center stage, an elder, robes marked by decades' brush against history, a staff echoing its own legends. His simplicity belied command. "Fear not the unknown, Andrea Ruffo," his voice pressed action beneath dictated serenade, language steeped in uniform humility. "For even stars hide until twilight calls." It was a strange comfort to offer in earnest, but sincerity lent strength to abstract sympathy. With her gaze unflinching, Andrea understood herself increasingly bound to the symmetry of assemblies unseen, each word a planar weave, foundations laid atop foundations met. The meeting concluded with quiet solitude, allowing Andrea something more traditional to rely on as she retraced reflection, traipsing alongside fortunes not easily understood. In leaving, drawn towards the portal of change, she hardly noticed time slipping further into dusk's embrace. Andrea reached for the patio's escape, only to find, within curled shadow's clasp, a glimmer of fortune, a relic, turning coin-like in self-perpetuated pirouettes upon the stone. This subtle continuity adopted meaning suddenly unburdened from earlier disguises. Andrea bent, entranced by glinting opportunity, picking up the coin which felt familiar by touch, but revelatory in newfound presence. A symbol, she realized, crafted from echo, as transformative as words which touched spoken oaths. Courage recognizes its own reflection, a soft voice whispered from memory's threshold. Andrea's fingers curling closed over destiny's quaint currency. And there, under watching skies, born anew of whispers shared, Andrea sensed the villa's pledge, and right within its choices, each laden with unspoken vow. Such simplicity, such revelation beckoned Andrea Ruffo onward, hinting change not adversive, but kin an optative invitation. And just as quickly, the night spoke, shedding ambiguity like a beckoning guardian. "Hold fast no compass," it whispered into lingering repose, "until the echo answers." The metallic clink shattered the silence like a gunshot, casting a long shadow over Andrea's determination. The door's closing echo seemed to linger even as her captors faded into the corridors of the villa, as if their very presence had left a stain upon the air. Stripped of anything but her wits, Andrea Ruffo remained rooted in place. The room offered little solace, bare walls save for the lingering fragrance of old leather and the flickering flame of a forgotten candle, half spent. Yet amid this austerity, she found comfort in solitude, in the stillness that allowed her mind to sharpen. Andrea wrapped her mind around every detail of her charge. Unknowingly, she was woven into a tapestry broader than she had anticipated. Never one to surrender to resignation, she set to work with the singular zeal that marked her inner revolt. Words thrummed like a lullaby within her head, each one carrying the whisper of potential freedom. "They underestimate you," she murmured to herself, voice barely breaking the mantle of quiet, as though speaking might draw unseen eyes into the sleek shadows. A bead of sweat traced a line down her temple, sticky with resolve. Her own semblance was an arsenal-composed facade masquerading as innocence, concealing a clever strategist not so easily subdued. Yet it was here, in the isolation of preparation, that each moment became a battle cry, a silent symphony of resistance set to the rhythm of her heartbeat. Memories played through Andrea's mind, her past weaving through the appointed locks like keys seeking tumblers. The corridors outside crackled with life, distant voices carried close by marble echoes. In reflex, Andrea adjusted her stance, ready to act, every muscle tense beneath her composed exterior. She could feel the pulse of deception from those who have held their cards until the game turned. Her own reality was colored in calculated moves, gradual revelations, and bold displays meant to assert control. A cold breeze slivered through ill-fitting edges of windows, brushing chill whispers across her cheek, a hint of freedom promised beyond these walls. A flicker of curiosity ignited as Andrea observed the connecting lineage between plight and opportunity. "If only this could be solved with a piano chord," she sighed, fingers drumming softly on the table's worn surface. Each note recalled forging chains and calculated design. From beyond her confinement came a voice, familiar yet foreign, spurred by recent encounters. Alessandro Ferrante, his presence as impervious as the steel bolted within these walls, wore his authority with a mastery that bristled danger beneath every calculated gesture. Draw strength from the unseen, he had imparted in the quarterlight, his words ripples in her own fight for clarity. The memory hovered amid the gathering quiet, Alessandro's expression a contradiction of resolve and curiosity as he dismissed security measures with breezy self-assurance. Andrea knew these were no mere recitations of loyalty. She had felt the crowded weight of his gaze upon her, rather as a rallying comment a soldier's unyielding promise conveyed in the language of charged scarcity. Doubt oscillated within her chest, an ember flickering even as instinct spiraled defiantly. Andrea's pathway rested upon more than bravado, it was purpose destined to navigate the incoming tides confidently. She tested the limits of her makeshift dominion within the confines of restraints, rapacious for leverage amid mundane promises. Each reconnoiter felt like prolonged seconds drifting between cutlass and tide. Pressure began to thread through Miranda's focus, visions of animated night thoughts pirouetting like shadows caught beneath rains fleeting. The looming inquiry from each parse decision overhead intertwined like centuries uncovering betrayal. Outside, footsteps announced a gathering storm, a husbandry of choice, promising no clemency, steeling herself within those creaking floors. The entrance gave way again to another tableau wherein masks slipped and promises floated within shrouded tongues. Alessandro himself shimmered into the room, surrounded by his silent entourage. Even without identifiable intention, his majesty grated against Andrea's skin as if wrought of tactile, wind-driven silk. The clarity of revelation punctuated her focus, his figure wavering yet sharply defined as Andrea contended the measure of queen or pawn. She understood the stakes more thoroughly now, comprehending the dominance of undervalue. Her truth lay easy beneath the tension. Reclaiming strength derived not from what was afforded, but usurped in earnest. Perhaps it was indeed she who held, within the intricacies, the greater subtleties of play. Andrea's smile was a radiant revelation, met with subtle grace as she watched surprise dance fleeting, subdued upon those consequential edges. "Tell me then," she announced, clear yet resolute beneath their glances. "Which stories did you mean for me to find?" As silence helixed about gathered determination, Andrea saw in his eyes the echo of precisely what lay at the heart. Across the unbridgeable silence, a new presence rocked back and forth, distinct lines faltering emotion with clarity. These threads have thus intertwined better than enemies suppose, she postured, expansive within internal metronome, her words guided by unerring veracity as secrets bled light through shadowed doors. Yet the shadowed visage held at bay revealed hidden motives accumulated beneath candied veneers. An empire's worth rests upon perception, the figure stated, a bane whisper shared like solemn trust. Tension rippled between introspective revelations, preparing to untether frailties against beats impossible to match. Indeed, Andrea acknowledged, though her spirit wound robust in resolution renowned. For perception and truth must merge to abide within their own spectrums of clarity. Awakening cells braided through their shared space, fibrous tones casting reflections upon veiled intentions. As the room slowly uncoiled from intensity, baked through machinations and experiment, Andrea emerged renewed, a flight amid uncertain campus. Her rarefied compass recalibrated with foundation, budding lexical shadows, leaving no unturned stone behind, striated designs forged under divergent circumstances. Satisfied, Alessandro could indeed regard the tableau through independent lens, now pledged not to tentative promises lingered by overt psychology, but adroit sways crystallized. Andrea bowed before grandeur in another form, its composure finite yet absurd beyond crepuscular embrace, focused elsewhere than prior narratives borne by fate. Rose breathed new iterations of camaraderie, an audience at once engrossed by cloistered memories beneath chiaroscuro tapestries, tangled with possibility. Unity casts its echo where none exists, dared Andrea, again murmuring the advent of proposed presentment, realizing the cardinal echo nature based within whispered acts. She listened for a chord parallel with arrangement veiled by silver seams, casting reflections constrained where actions held light's comprehension. As the evening waned, encapsulating ages carried forward by always passing for purposes crown, simple gestures entreated silence dwelling deeply among metrics once appropriated willfully toward revolution's limits, centering far behind. It began anew. The constant drift of called pretexts transfixed in indelible contagion and narrative eclipsed light. A voice emerged within the heavy atmosphere, distinct in its presence. True strength lies in the tempered, or sometimes hidden hand. The words slipped soft and determined out of obscurity into Andrea's present. And within this aperture, an opportunity awaited Andrea to grasp all fortune clearly hidden and prepare for resolution sewn with the threads of destiny beckoning. An hourglass turned where expectation hovered, but the final line whispered truth, poised beneath inevitable as day toward night's embrace, naturally. A loud crack of thunder ripped across the sky, and with it, the unyielding sense that Andrea was no longer in control of her narrative, entirely swept away by a storm she could not navigate. Andrea Rufo's mind was alight with the relentless pulse of urgency. Shadows writhed across the villa's intricate frescoed ceilings, like serpents meeting amid a tryst of chaos, symbols she could scarcely decipher yet felt innately connected. She ran a hand over her wrist where a subtle scar lent her guidance, a token from childhood misadventures, back when her spirit was as uncontrollable as a February breeze. These small marks of past rebellions whispered resilience into her decisions. Outside the villa, night had descended, draping the estate in a silken shroud of moonlit silver, each breeze carrying the fragrance of night-blooming jasmine, entwined with the rich aroma of damp earth, a scent symphony. The weight of Alessandro's expectations pressed against her sternum as tangibly as the storm-heavy air. But Andrea steeled herself for the tasks that lay ahead with an audacity that belied her paper-thin confidence. Just as she'd been on the verge of clarity, the landscape had shifted underfoot. Experiencing the villa's labyrinth thread its mystery around her, Andrea was reminded once again how intertwined secrets and destiny could weave their chain. Alessandro had vanished into the villa's depths hours ago, leaving Andrea to wade through her path with nothing more than whispers of advice, or were they riddles left in his wake? Her mind turned over recent events, her enemies obscured by polite smiles and varnished civility. Andrea's own rise and fall, sheltered within merely one cycle of the Sun Her Quiet rebellion, challenged and tempered by the very allure of an ancient, whispered power. There was nowhere to go but forward. Such mentality often afforded those who, like Andrea, could only liberate themselves from invisible chains by facing adversity head-on. The grand hall loomed before her like a cavern waiting to be explored, the twin doors yawning wide openly, inviting Andrea into their embrace of darkened space. Here, framed by moonlight's gentle watercolor, she looked both mighty and vulnerable, a maiden hero in an epic draped in evening's dramatic cloak. Determined, Andrea gathered her resolve and stepped within, fingers tracing the cool demeanor of unseen fears as she passed beneath the vaulted ceiling. All too aware of figures spinning within shadows, faces masked by intrigue, yet sharpened by familiarity. A voice punctuated the silence, low yet resonant with command, resonating with the power of a storm passing through stone. How fares one who strides through storm cast against shadow? It carried an undercurrent of recognition, elongated vowels creasing the air. Andrea lifted her gaze, meeting Alessandro's knowing smile despite herself, her heart warmed by the subtleties of the question. Storms follow their course, she responded, with emotion tempered by the force of her calm acknowledgement. But it's the echo left behind that truly forms us. Alessandro approached languidly, yet methodically, the fragile light playing upon his features, painting half in shadow's oil, half in firelight. It isn't quite over, dear Andrea, cautioned Alessandro, his voice gentle as a moth's wing, yet grave in profundity. This evening's descent is yet but an overture. The hall grew quieter, absorbing the gravity of his words, a dissonance of shared fears and expectations that drew Andrea into an expanding tapestry just shy of completion. Entangled in his intent gaze, Andrea discerned truths embedded within each syllable. This was more than merely salvaging their immediate circumstances. Here, choices would set unshakable ideals in motion. Footsteps echoed from side corridors. The returning council shadowed as stone footsteps beat ambitiously into their circle. And then there was silence, interrupted only by whispers of the wind through solemn cloister windows. A line of questioning emerged of its own volition, as though conjured not by circumstance, but fate's rhythma, harmony of light and darkness aligned. Andrea faced the assembled figures, each a bastion of untold stories, and felt a storm pulsing beneath her skin, a promise of adventures and remnants from earlier trials stained with imminent realization. What course does one take within mirrored labyrinths of our consequences? She queried boldly, her voice resolute in resolution, challenging unseen threats with iron play tempered anew. Alessandro's gaze flickered with assessed curiosity, its gravity pulling Andrea back to their shared tether of destiny. A long silence followed, as if unspoken agreement bound them together. If one cannot claim the sun, mused a lone voice from the gathered throng, gravelly and compelling, then must she not embrace the night? The elder representative's challenge boosted Andrea's mettle, offering her a glimpse of assurance in shared recognition. With grace unmeasured, Andrea chose acceptance. The villa, its inhabitants and guardians were not demons to ward off, but allies earning through trials, fortune's allies. Conceding, she looked directly to Alessandro. Through the glow, a cascade of understanding passing unspoken between shadow and silhouette. It seems the path ahead beckons us to unity, Andrea agreed, shoulders steady under unseen burdens relieved with acknowledgement. Quiet nods from the assembly followed, a note of stoic approval adrift in solemnity found. Somewhere beyond the illuminated clarity, darkness lifted its veil. Andrea sensed she knew, that another layer had eroded between what was hers and tomorrow's promise. Do we now consider it free? She mused in finality, eyes shining in the transformative gossamer cast from candle flickers. The silence stretched impossibly thin, a broom poised above the dust of disbelief in prelude to reckoning. Alessandro stepped into her personal sphere, her space denied yet treasured, and tilted her chin gently with kind eyes. Free? Truth seeks its own harbor, he murmured, with serenade impersonate assurance bound to laughter's softer register. He unfurled his hold as if relinquishing mint stories to sky. Before she could speak, Andrea noticed the capture of her wrist once more, the old scar stark against pale skin, a storyteller etched unto her name. There, drawn across its surface like winding rivers or traced threads, lay hope. A scar one might mistake for mere history, yet still it unfurled. Tales told in traces of the woven song of Andrea Ruffo's unfolding life. Her heart alight with resolve, she turned back towards the council, the light her echo now their witness to a promise yet to reveal. Together they faced the perpetual night. But just as Andrea thought peaceful resolution had settled over them, something moved in the embers of dwindling fire. The glint of something sharp, a talisman, or perhaps a warning, winked beneath shadows at the corner of her vision. A promise, a threat, a hidden truth lying in wait. The midnight breeze threaded Andrea's hair, swirling silver tendrils around her face like a restless wraith. The scent of sandalwood mingled with jasmine, teasing the senses, while moonlight spilled generously over the villa's garden like a goddess blessing the earth. It was all too suffocatingly beautiful, too serene, a stark contrast to the war breaking inside Andrea Ruffo. She trembled beneath her composed facade, acutely aware of the letter she clutched in her pocket, each word a talisman against betrayal's barbed whispers. "I can't do this," she whispered to herself, the quiet affirmation a sanctuary amidst chaos. Andrea took a deep breath, fighting the instinct to run, as cinematic memories stormed her consciousness, all the revelations, confrontations, and Alessandro's unwavering gaze. Moonlit shadows wrapped around her, reminding Andrea of cloaked figures from her imaginings. Yet these shadows were born of tangible fears, secret allegiances buried deep beneath the villa's ancient stones. The council awaited her inside, an assembly whose approval carried untold weight. Andrea's heart was a molten core of resolve and anxiety. Yet there was power beneath that fear, raw, unwavering belief in her untested mettle. Andrea adjusted the lapel of her midnight blue coat, its rich fabric brushing against her skin like encouragement, before crossing the threshold of the grand hall. Each step was deliberate, echoing through the cavernous space like whispers of ghosts. Inside, Alessandro sat poised at the room's grand table, his presence as commanding as a general awaiting a pivotal report. Flickers of firelight played across his face, casting eerie half-shadows that both softened and sharpened his features. "Welcome back, Miss Ruffo," he said, his voice carrying the weight of familiarity and something more wistful. "Does the night often lay with such heavy persuasion?" Andrea met his gaze, letting it ground her. "Sometimes the weight of truth feels like a stone, yet other times it liberates," she replied with careful honesty, her words echoing into the murmuring silence. Alessandro's gaze flickered with something resembling approval, a rare insight into his intentions behind the impenetrable facade. "We must prepare," he declared, standing with it a fluid grace that belied urgency. Andrea felt her pulse quicken, the sudden pivot to action igniting an involuntary thrill of anticipation. "What must I do?" He approached her, the soft brush of his velvet jacket whispering against the silent hall, and offered a small, inconspicuous box from inside his pocket. "In here lies the key," Alessandro stated with a bemused smile. Andrea accepted it hesitantly, the weight of the bead a physical promise of truth veiled until now. Her fingers brushed its cool surface, tracing the engraved pattern, rose intertwined with thorns. The council members watched in silence as she opened it carefully, revealing a time-worn locket that sparked with a presence beyond mere metal. Inside the locket's cover, a miniature portrait of a woman smiled wisely, a distant ancestor from Andrea's maternal line. "This," Alessandro whispered, "is what connects us." The realization that his plot was intricately tethered to her family history struck Andrea with disarming force. "Why me?" she asked softly, the question almost lifted away by the night air. "Because your heart understands the path," he replied, stepping back to allow Andrea room to piece together her fractured lineage. The council stirred as if with a collective understanding, acknowledging Andrea's presence now, not just as a guest, but as a part of something infinitely larger. Confusion sought to claim Andrea, yet unraveling lay just beyond. A wisp of intuition, colored by familial intrigue, heightened her senses. "It was always about you, Andrea," Alessandro said, "a story waiting through generations for its rebirth." She nodded, the weight of realization grounding her curiosity as she fastened the locket around her neck. Its metal kissed her skin, promises binding through time's eternal echo. But the respite was fleeting. Footsteps, a cavalcade of echoing purpose, sounded from deeper within the villa. Urgency called again. "You must choose," Alessandro said, inches from revelation, his voice weaving trust and challenge in the charged air. "Reform what was stolen and protect what remains." The storm had come, unfurling its chaos, rattling windows and clawing at doors, but within its heart lay opportunity wrapped in inevitability. As Andrea's resolve solidified, a cautious understanding reached between soul and ether. A single phrase stirred. "Only shadows know." She turned toward Alessandro, questions poised but silenced by a wave of rolling disappearance, of burden and solitude. In days past, Andrea might have fled, but not tonight. Instead, she let the calculated gamble whisper strength through time's creases and chose to step forward. Their eyes met, history spilling forth in a handshake not written in annals but felt, a palpable shift woven into narrative tapestry by shared determination. "Lead with me," Alessandro urged, nodding toward a destiny cast within approaching squalls. Andrea followed, purposeful footsteps filled with weight as her heart echoed the life she'd begun to embrace among these tales. Each stride was buoyant, fortified by purpose and possibility, yet not entirely the residues of their mirroring hearts. A gust kicked the doors wide open as if the storm outside had grown impatient with prelude, yearning for crescendo. In tandem, they stepped into the night, Andrea's fingers tracing the locket, an anchor embracing winds. The villa, an orchestra whispering secrets woven with echoes, watched them depart, the silent guardian to their path charted through fate's storm-stripped epistle. In the shadows cast by weather and moon, hidden by nature's distorted theater, was a figure observing, a reminder that their tale, like the cycle of seasons, was scarcely complete. "Do you see?" the figure uttered within storm's shroud, puzzling question adrift on nature's front. Andrea paused mid-step, feeling the imperceptible pause in the Earth's rotation as possibility widened the horizon. The regretted edge of uncertainty murmured its answer, a promise, sealed beneath promising skies, demanding rebirth where futures claimed morrow. In reply, a whisper reached back, untamed yet etched by the yarn Andrea had learned to weave, stitching a new beginning in stars' repose. "I see everything," she answered, each word whisper-thin, yet borne by silken strength, a prelude to the maelstrom yet theirs to sail. Andrea awoke with a sudden gasp of air. The storm had wrought vivid dreams, leaving the line between imagination and memory blurred. Dawn stretched golden beams through the slender gaps in the curtains, splashing her shin with a renewal bathed in warmth. Her gaze settled upon Alessandro standing by the balcony, a brooding figure wrapped in serenity itself. He seemed deep in pondering, lost amid the swirling rebirth of decisions past. As if sensing her watch, he turned, gifting her the fullness of a smile laden with secrets shared among conspirators. Andrea smoothed the crumpled sheet, rising with an unspoken grace cultivated in recent trials. She felt reborn, a phoenix rising not from friendly sands, but the discordant ashes of uncertainty. "Today's the day," Alessandro announced, his voice freighted with significance, shadowing hints of hesitation for the cascade yet to unfold. She nodded, allowing herself the meager indulgence of vulnerability. "Thank you," she began, words holding the weight of gratitude marbled through time, "for believing that even shadows harbor opportunity." Alessandro replied merely with a nod, his gaze aflame, intensity seared by conviction. Andrea stepped closer, drawn irresistibly into the orbit of familial secrets and fledgling certainties. "I've chosen," she revealed, wisps of excitement threading her resolve, "to weave a new dawn from this winding web." He reached to touch the locket gracing her neck, fingers brushing its intricate relief and prompting her heart to mirror new harmony. Together, his eyes quietly beckoned hers. Their commitment shared, Andrea inhaled deeply, treasuring the moment's pause as a sacred breath held between history's parchment expanse. The morning matured, shedding dew upon verdant leaves until the villa resonated with life, every echo a note within their approach toward destiny. Beneath solemn archways bustling with eager conspiracy, the council assembled once more, their waiting expressions canvases alive with layered purpose. Andrea's steps announced her entrance, dignity her cloak while determination blazed as her emblem. She took charge, allowing silence to spin gold from threads of tension, binding hearts to fortitude. Not idle, the figures took careful measure of their place among kindred alliances, willing allies coupled with those wary of change. Prepare, Alessandro instructed, his tone striking her senses as firm command delivered with grace. For the road is sharp and chorus strong. One figure, unexpected yet keen of gaze, raised inquiry. Will your resolve hold? Should tempest seize clarity? Andrea, steadied by accumulated wisdom, met the query with unyielding poise. My path forward bears past reflection refashioned for tomorrow's tapestry. Here, within lies my compass. A flicker of approval lighted eyes around the circle, acknowledging gravitas earned by balance portrayed. Outside, the daybreaker radiated its harmony, nature's anthem urging hidden answers sown in renewal and silent escape. Amid the growing flurry of intent, Andrea consented to her inner counsel, an echo bouncing through margins, marbled with Grace's stroke. They flowed from strength to opposite reserve, earth and course forged anew by passage of shaded souls, echoing resilience. Beyond threshold's veil, the unknown whispered the wind spoke its playful refrain. Do you see?